Oof, I kind of botched that intro right over there. I do apologize, but now that you're still here, I'm positive that you're interested enough in the bike to bear through the awful Austrian English accent. Sorry for that, but hopefully you will see as little of myself here in our studio as possible, because the really interesting stuff is the riding in the Himalayas with the new Himalayan. I was fortunate enough to be invited to Manali, which is in the northern Indian province of Himachal Pradesh, and from there on we started our 2 days ride with the new Himalayan. Manali is at an altitude of 2,200 meters, and we went up from there through the 9-kilometer long Atal tunnel, and then we're really in the middle of the Himalayas. The maximum altitude we reached was 3,200 meters, and that's very relevant because of the engine power. I won't bore you with all the new technical details. If you're looking for that, there will be a link in the video description below, so check that out. I'm gonna now focus really on my impressions and how it feels to ride the new Himalayan. And coming back to the altitude and the power, of course, the increase in power, 65% in horsepower, that's one of the major things I think people will notice about the new Himalayan. We now have 40 horsepower and 40 Newton meters of torque, which is quite a big jump, but I and all the other journalists at this first presentation of the Himalayan never really were able to experience this new 40 horsepower, because at the altitude we were at, the engine loses about 25% of its power, especially in the lower revs. It takes away more from the lower revs. So my first impression was actually on Himalayan, it does not have the, I will call it like tractor-like, like from a truck, the characteristic. The engine lacks that now. It's not as trackable. Now I'm starting mixing German with English, but it does not have like this super constant power delivery that does not go away, that is just, it doesn't care how low the revs get. The old one was just like tuk, 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 pushing you on, and the new one doesn't manage to do it quite as much. It's still a one-cylinder engine, so it still has a lot of down-low torque. It's still very easy to ride. Now we have electric ride-by-wire, one of the many firsts for Royal Enfield with the new Himalayan, but still it needs a bit more revs, I would say like 1,000 turns more, so it gets really smooth, and it then also keeps a stable amount of gas while going, for example, off-road or also on the road. One reason for that for sure was the altitude. I'm really now curious how it will be at like sea level with the full 40 horsepower. But another reason for this change in engine characteristics is for sure now, if you look at the bore to stroke ratio, the stroke just got a lot shorter, smaller, so the engine itself is not that super tracker tuk 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 engine as it was before. I didn't bother, or I didn't mind that really, because on the other side the new engine gives a lot more practicability in everyday use, not just in adventuring. Of course you have to keep a little bit higher revs. You also have to switch back. For example, if you come to a hairpin corner, you have to switch back to the first rev if you really want to go smoothly and can't take too much momentum. So I noticed that change, but on the other hand, with more horsepower, of course, it's just easier to manage everyday situations. It's still not a sporty engine. If we're expecting that now it's gonna feel sporty, it does not. It's still, I would say, a mule, like the old Himalayan was. It's a mule, but now it's a stronger mule, so it's a lot easier, for example, overtaking a truck while going up was a challenge with only 27 horsepower. Now with the 40, it's like basically any other motorcycle, especially as the engineers of Royal Enfield managed it. Although there's so much more new stuff, bigger engine, the cooler in front, 2 liters more of fuel capacity, and still they managed to skim off a little bit of the weight. So now we're at 196 kilograms ready to ride. So now it really handles, and it you can overtake like with a normal motorcycle, which I liked a lot. Other parts where there was quite a big change, and I would say improvement, are the brakes and the suspension. The brakes now are a bit bigger than the old ones, still only 1 disc at the front, but especially if they use them together, so when braking, not only apply the front brake but both brakes, then now you have a lot more stopping power, and it also felt a lot more stable and reliable than the brakes on the old one. Because on the old one, especially if you went here in Austria and the close by Alps, you have passes that just go down forever, one hairpin after the other one strong braking maneuver after the next one. So on the old one I had some sketchy situations because just the brakes couldn't handle it anymore, and were getting very hot. On the new one, it felt just more reliable. You don't get as soon to the limit of the brakes, I would say, just because they're bigger, and still they're not sporty as all the other parts of the Himalayan. But after the first very soft initial brake point, if you pull the brakes enough, you can feel it. There's enough stopping power to get you down from high speeds quite quickly. The suspension was a big surprise for me because I heard some of the technical details in beforehand, and one of that was that the suspension is going to be non-adjustable. So I thought, bike in the lower price range, non-adjustable suspension. I figured, as it is often the case in that price range, that the suspension is just going to be very soft, very on the comfortable side, as to not to scare anybody off. But to my delight, it is not the case. It's really in the sweet spot of being hard enough to also push a little bit, to use those 40 horsepower to get up to quicker speeds, and even then if you have a little bit of a bumpy surface, you are leaning, going through the corner, and there's a bump, it does not start wobbling and getting uneasy, so it's hard to control. It's really, even if you have a bump while leaning, while going through the corner faster, boom, it just takes it, stays stable, it's easy to follow your riding line. So I like that a lot, although the suspension was really showed its capabilities in the off-road part, because there, of course, I'm lucky enough, I'm super skinny, so I'm just in the right weight category for which the Royal Enfield engineers just designed the suspension, 75 kilograms, and I was trying as hard as I could on the off-road parts. I was looking for the biggest stones looking out of the ground, for the biggest and deepest bumps, and just throwing my weight onto the bike when I was going to the bump, because I was trying to get it to bottom out and I didn't manage. So that's great in my opinion for a non-adjustable suspension, so that I'm not able to bottom it out, and at the same time it's still quite comfy, because then for some part on the off-road I even tried just sitting down, as you maybe would do when you have a long traveling day behind you, and you just want to get to your destination, there's no energy left, so you just sit down, even on gravel, even on some off-road path. And I could do it without breaking my back. So I would say comfy enough. Of course, will it be the same? Will it then bottom out more if you have a heavier rider than me, or if you have luggage, because we had no luggage at all? That's something I cannot tell you now, so the future tests will tell us that. Also max load capacity, very nice, 198 kilograms on the new Himalayan. That's more than a lot more expensive bikes offer you, like for example the Yamaha T7. Also nice for a bike in that category is, in my opinion, how much features, electronical features, they put in the new Himalayan. I was not expecting something like a nice round TFT display, and not only that, but with quite the advanced technology in it. I was expecting, as it is ride-by-wire, to be there some kind of riding modes. We have performance and eco. Eco is very, very, very on the careful side, I will call it. So, in my opinion, only for the really slippiest of conditions. Otherwise, it just nothing happens. You have diminished power in the first 4 gears. They could not tell me by how much it's lessened, but it was so slow on the gas that I was taking performance all the time, because it's a very easy to handle, very easy to apply throttle engine. So even if you are kind of a beginner, or if you only rode the old Himalayan with the 27 horsepower in before, it should not be a problem to ride the new one. However, you have those 2 riding modes, and in both riding modes you can also switch between your 2 ABS modes. One is for the road, and the off-road ABS switches off ABS in the back and has a different kind of rhythm in which it controls the bike. I'm now lacking better words for that, but I think you know what I mean. It's just made for loose surfaces in the off-road mode, so there's still an ABS active in the front, but it's not as careful, or it's even more careful than on the road, optimized. But coming back to the features of the TFT display, for example, it's called Tripper Dash, and you can use it like Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. It's not really Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. You need the free Royal Enfield app. Your phone connects via Wi-Fi function to the display, but then the navigation, how it looks in the Royal Enfield app and how it looks in your display, it's the same as Google Maps, because it is developed based on Google Maps. So I really liked it. It works great. The only thing that was bothering me a little bit is the battery consumption on your smartphone, because first of all, the Wi-Fi function uses more energy than the Bluetooth connection, and second of all, for some technical necessity, which I could not quite understand what it is, but they can't completely lock and shut down or switch off your display of your smartphone. For some reason it has to stay on. They soft lock it, so you can't accidentally press something. You can put it in your jacket pocket, but it stays on as long as you have the big 3D navigation in your display. So the battery gets drained really quickly. As a help, they have there's a little USB-C socket underneath the handlebar, so yeah, you can plug and charge your phone while riding, but still that was bothering me a little bit because it drained it really, really fast. You can switch back to the analog display style. In the digital display style you can have your 3D map. In the analog display style you only have a turn-by-turn navigation, and as I was told, then it also can completely switch off the display, so you save a little bit of energy. But the things that I like the most, apart from how good it felt, how easy it felt to ride, and still had some capacities to go a bit sporty, to push, especially in the off-road part. What I liked the most was, first of all, the accessibility, even if you are, the accessibility for smaller people, even if you are not a big rider, because usually even the adventure bikes like the T7, which are considered somewhat lightweight, they're still big, intimidating bikes, and the Royal Enfield is not like that. It's like weight-wise, it's not that far away from a T7, but it feels a lot lighter because the weight is very down low, very fast forward, centered or around the center of the bike. So even at low speeds or while standing, it does not feel that heavy, and that continues while riding. Only slight inputs are needed to guide it, for example, through some rocky terrain. It's very easy to steer through. only when you get a little bit faster on the road and you have some very fast changing corners, then it needs a bit of strength to get it from one side to the other. That is because of the big 21-inch front wheel. In the back we have a 17-inch back wheel. They opted for 17-inch instead of the traditional 18-inch wheels because they wanted to keep it in the for the sake of accessibility. They wanted to keep the seat height low. It's now at an adjustable 125 to 145 millimeters. So it's a lot lower than most adventure bikes, and that was only possible in combination with the 230 millimeters of room below the bike and 200 millimeters of suspension travel. So to balance all of that, they had to settle for the 17-inch rear wheel. What Royal Enfield also has thought about, because accessibility is a major thing of the Himalayan, always was, but also always it was considered to be like a really world traveler friendly bike, because this technology was simple enough so it could be repaired basically anywhere. And although the jump now with the technology was quite big for the new Himalayan, it still is supposed to be somewhat easy to repair. So they focused on giving it, I'm gonna call it, adventure qualities. For example, the subframe, the rear subframe, is bolted on to the rest of the frame. That's also something you don't see on a lot of even more expensive competitors like the T7, the Touareg, the Transalp. They all have welded on subframes, which is, in case of a crash, not that good. Also, modern adventure bikes tend to have like a minimal amount of tools on the bike. And for example, for my Tenere, I own a T7. I had to, for my first real proper ride out, had to get to the market, to the tool shop, and I had to write down all those special dimensions and bolts and nuts I needed to be then on the safe side if I go adventuring and something happens, that I can just repair it myself. To my surprise, and a big kudos to Royal Enfield for that, you can unmount or like take out both of the wheels just with the tools on board. You have everything you need there. So that was really, like, for me, they thought of the adventurers out there. Another thing is little things like you can rotate the clasps of the handlebar. They rotate 180 degrees, then the handlebar goes a couple of millimeters to the front, which expands the use, because it shouldn't only expands the space in the saddle, so it's also better for bigger riders. So it's not just accessible for the small riders out there, but also for the bigger ones. And now we get to the ergonomics of the bike, and they are also a thing, in my opinion, they nailed, because it's comfy still. You have a very comfy knee angle while sitting, typical adventure bike style, very upright, but it's not too comfortable, because the thing is, if they make it too comfortable, especially for the knee angle, the foot pegs come very far forward. Transalp is the best example for that, the new Transalp. But if the foot pegs are too far forward, and then you stand up, you have no room between the foot pegs, between your standing point and the handlebar. So when you then go up, or maybe you apply a bit of throttle and you go faster, you want to have your weight to the front so you can stay easy on the handlebar. You don't have to grasp it really tightly. So they nailed it. It's just far enough back so you have a lot of room going forward, even going with a little bit faster going up. I had enough room. Also, the tank form is very nicely done. It may look a bit funny because of the two bulbs, or I don't know how to call it, the thick thingies left and right, which they had to do to reach the new fuel tank capacity of 17 liters. But in the middle and till a point, till it goes outwards, it's very slim. So your knee have like a very good grip and your legs, and you do not have, like on a lot of other adventure bikes, that you spread your legs like that. No, it's really spot on in my opinion. So the ergonomics only enable you to make the most out of the new engine, the new suspension, and all together, it just works all together. Easy to handle, but still enough room, enough power, and enough capacity and capabilities in the suspension, the brakes, to not hold back because of any reason. The last discipline an adventure bike needs to perform in is, in my opinion, like the long distance traveling. Especially here in Europe, we don't always have the possibility to go on an adventure ride right off our doorstep. So usually we have to get some highway, motorway, autobahn behind us till we are in an adventurous area. Sadly, this is something I could not really test because the roads in the Himalaya just do not provide you with long stretches where you can go at traveling speeds and keep those traveling speeds for a while. One thing I could test regarding the long distance capabilities of the new Himalayan is the reach, because our first riding day was the longer one. We had 240 kilometers of riding, quite challenging roads. We were around some time. Also, those journalistic rides are never the most economically friendly, so no slow on the gas, it's just full throttle and testing the limits. So you could ride it a lot more economically friendly, but still, after 240 kilometers the whole day, I came back to the hotel and I still had more of the half of the fuel tank remaining. So I think you can say 500 kilometers with one fuel tank should not be a problem. In like the standard windscreen is quite small. The wind hit me like here and the arms are in the wind, but there's a bigger screen in the accessories. And otherwise the engine can do now those traveling speed a lot more comfortably. As I said, I could not really try it for a long amount of time, but you reach 100 kph in fourth gear easily. The max speed according to Royal Enfield is 151 kilometers an hour, and we have now 6 gears. Great, also big improvement. So it should be, in my opinion, easily possible to go 120 kph somewhat comfortably. And now I think it's time to come to an end of the video, and I now had a lot of good things to say about the Himalayan, but of course there's always some way of improvement. And also it would be a real embarrassment for the other manufacturers if you could not see the expected, we don't know the exact prices yet, but the expected lower price segment where the new Himalayan is going to be positioned in. It would be, you have to see it somewhere, right? And of course, if you look at the welds, you could see they are not as nicely done as we are used to from some premium manufacturers. There are also some differences in how things are mounted or together, left side to the right side. So you can just see it was like a little bit of cheaper materials, maybe cheaper labor, but in my opinion, comparing the many qualities the new Himalayan has while riding, I don't really then care that it's not as nicely done. One thing adventurers could say it's not an improvement could be the new position of the air filter. It used to be underneath the seat, but they now move the batteries and the fuses underneath the seat so that they are more accessible. But the air filter then had to move underneath the tank to the front, which now, of course, if you're riding through a dusty area, maybe you have to clean or change your air filter daily. Now you have to untake the tank. I checked it out, it's not that big of a deal because you just take off the seat, you have 3 bolts you have to undo, and of course your fuel tubes. After that you can just take it off, so it should still be doable somewhat quickly, but it's not as easy as it was before. Regarding the tires, standard tires are Seat Grip. I've never heard of them, they're an Indian tire product. They performed well for me in India, but we had dry conditions, so I don't know how they handle in the wet, if they have some grip. But probably most riders here will then switch it out for something they know and trust more. One last nice thing to mention is the increase in the service intervals. We now have a 10,000 kilometers service interval for the oil, and I think 30,000 service interval for the valves. For the valve service. Yeah, that's also good to know. Otherwise, the first service after you buy the bike is after 500 kilometers, and then every 12 months, if I remember that correctly. And now I think I'm pretty much at the end. Royal Enfield Himalayan, great bike with a lot of improvements in the most important areas, in my opinion, and very little bad things to say about it. And so, in my opinion, the only way this bike could fail is if they put on a too big of a price tag, because there's actually not that much space towards other cheap and reliable bikes like the Suzuki V-Strom 650, which offer more power. And at the end, power is the thing most people look at firstly. So it could happen that if the price jump is as big as the technological jump, that it gets a lot stronger competition. So I'm hoping for a price here in Austria at about 6,500 euros. We will see how much it will be, but Royal Enfield themselves said that it's not supposed to be that big of a jump in the price as it was from the technological standpoint. If I forgot anything and you're still interested in knowing some facts about Himalayan, write your questions in the comment section below. Leave me a thumbs up if you liked this video, and thank you if you went through all of it with my Austrian English. Next time Alessio is gonna take over as he does on our English channel of 1000 PS. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye. Viert euch.